I spent over $244,000 in Facebook ads for 41 of my local business clients over 12 months, and the results were not at all what I thought they would be. And to be honest, guys, I wasn't sure if I should make this video because there's just a little bit too much value in here to give away for free. But I figured the people deserve to know the truth, because you see, most people flash their low cost per lead or their super sexy secret marketing formula, but very few people actually know the truth about Facebook leads. They're not all they're cracked up to be. But there's a twist to this video. We didn't just generate the leads for the clients. My team actually called and texted every single one of them. And not just once or twice. We called each lead a minimum of 3 times, sometimes 4 within the first 72 hours, and texted them 5 or 6 times during that same time frame. Not only that, we followed a sales script that was vetted by multiple consultants from within the space that was proven to help people commit and show up to their appointments, drilled that sales script daily on real calls, and reviewed the calls weekly for quality assurance. This isn't your nephew's lead gen agency. This is a legit company with a legit process. So I'm not just going to share cost per lead numbers with you and tell you how cool I am. From the $244,000 that we spent, I'm going to show you how many leads we generated, the average cost per lead, how many responded at least once, how many scheduled, how many showed up for their appointments, and what the average ROI was. Let's get into it. First of all, the number of leads, 5,944, which brings the average cost per lead to $46.40. Now, these were a combination of leads from Facebook Messenger and Facebook lead ads. And when I say lead, I don't just mean a messenger message. I mean, they gave us their name, their phone, and their email. By the way, these are orthodontists scattered all over the US and Canada. Now, after following the lead follow-up protocol that I mentioned and that you see on the screen now, we had 4,028 people respond at least once, which is just shy of 68% of leads. And this is a huge takeaway for anyone running ads. You can literally just take 30% of all leads generated from Facebook and light them on fire for all they care. Calls, texts, voicemails, persistent, consistent follow-up. And these guys are just not bothered. They're never going to respond. Now, we even continued to text them for up to 6 months later. And every once in a while, someone would respond. But for 99.9% of cases, if they didn't get back to us within the first 3 days, they never got back to us. That's another really big lesson. So of our 4,028 that had the decency to respond once, guess how many actually scheduled an appointment? 2,388. That's almost exactly 40% of the original lead number of 5,944. But as you well-versed advertisers are now thinking, what about the bane of my existence? What about no-shows? Now, it's important to note that our protocol for helping mitigate no-shows varied from client to client, but it always included reminder texts, and I would say about 40% of the time included reminder calls or confirmation calls 24 to 48 hours before the appointment. Now, a quick tip here for everyone trying to mitigate no-shows. Mr. Hormozy himself, back in the gym launch days, would tell his gyms to book people within 48 hours no matter what. And to do that, they would literally get on the phone and say, I have nothing available except today in the afternoon. I had a couple cancellations and a couple cancellations tomorrow. So we can only fit you in today or tomorrow. So they would lie to them because they did have availability later on, just to make sure that their no-show rate was mitigated, because the closer you schedule to the phone call, the more likely they are to show up. Now, in practice, unless you lie to people, this is a little bit tougher to do. So while we tried to get people within 72 hours most of the time, it didn't always happen. That said, the average no-show rate was 37.77%, meaning that the show-up rate was 62%. Now, to be honest, show-up rates are tricky, and the one thing I picked up here is that it's super market dependent. Certain markets virtually had no-shows, and other markets it was like pulling teeth just to get the average consumer to show up for an appointment that they had voluntarily scheduled. As I tried to fix this problem, I came up with a checklist of everything that can affect no-shows. It's up on the screen now, feel free to use it. Now, I want to pause to give a moment of silence to all of our lost leads so far.
She wasn't true.
No show.
But also to point out a very interesting ratio here. It just so happens that the number 1,486, which is the total number of showed leads, divided by 5,944, which is the total number of leads, is exactly 25%. This means that if you're running Facebook ads in a local lead gen scenario and you're trying to convert them to appointments, you can realistically expect 1 in 4 leads to convert to a showed appointment. But as we all know, appointments are not sales. So what are the sales numbers? Well, this is where it gets a little bit fuzzier because we weren't able to get every single client to accurately report ROI every single month because, well, they're busy. Also, every orthodontist price is a little bit different, but with a little bit of educated guessing, we can get pretty accurate numbers here. So assuming that every single patient is worth $5,000, which is the average across the USA, and that of the leads that the office either left in confirmed appointment, pending sale, or other stages indicating that they booked an appointment, but we never knew if they no-showed or showed up and closed, whatever. If we assume 25% of these unknown leads ended up closing, I think that's a fairly reasonable low estimate as to what would have happened that we can base the ROI numbers on. And for our high-end estimate, we'll assume that 75% of these unknown leads ended up closing eventually. Not super likely, but also not impossible. With those assumptions in place, these are the numbers we get for ROAS. On the low end, we have 16.09x, and on the high end, we have 26.78x. Now, these are super impressive numbers, great to tell your grandma at the dinner table. But of course, there are more costs here. The fee to run this campaign with my agency was $2,000 per month. So when you add that on top of ad spend, the ROI numbers look more like this: 4.81x ROI on the low end and 7.58x on the high end. Still pretty gnarly marketing ROI numbers. However, there's another level for the business owner, and that's overhead. So let's take the average orthodontist margins of 50% and assume instead of making $5,000 in revenue for every patient, they're making $2,500 in profit. So in this case, we're doing an apples to apples comparison on the orthodontist take home income from running a campaign like this. Like, is he or she actually better off running ads with an agency with these types of results, or just throwing this money in the stock market? Those numbers are 2.43x on the low end and 3.89x on the high end, meaning that on the very lowest end of our average results, we had built a system that you could put $10,000 in and get $24,300 back. And even on the very worst end, they would pay $1,092 to acquire a new customer, which was then worth $2,500 in profit to them. So what's the key takeaway for the agency and for the small business in this situation? There's a few. Number one, you should expect 80% of leads to never close. Out of 10 leads, you're going to have 3 that are extremely flaky and never answer the phone. You're going to have 4 that are wishy-washy, may talk to you a little bit, may schedule an appointment, but will probably no-show. And then the last 3 will probably show up, and it's up to your sales team's ability how many of those you close. And while the numbers that I shared in this video will vary widely between industry, offer, price, market, etc., I can promise you that for all the talks about quote-unquote improving lead quality, it's way more important as an agency to set the expectation that a lot of these leads aren't going to convert, because then your client isn't going to be so disappointed when they're expecting 10 out of 10 leads to show up and close like unicorns. But here's the last takeaway with a really valuable piece of advice. As you can see, even with quote unquote low lead conversion, the ROI is still massive. And this is only counting the direct effects of this ad, not the secondary effects, like increased brand equity in the area. Becoming a household name by running ads for years and years and years is a real tangible marketing result. Number 2, for every lead that comes in and closes, you can actually turn them into 2, 3, 4, or 5 other sales because they're going to refer. So suddenly your 2.5x ROI turns into 5, 10, 15x ROI on your profit if you provide them with an excellent experience and encourage referrals. So again, education is key. The small business has to understand that they are getting an ROI right away, but there's also a long tail ROI that's going to hockey stick eventually as long as they stick to the process. If you liked this video, I promise you there's more where this came from. Sign up for my 1-hour free SMMA training where I talk about exactly how I went from 0 to almost $2 million in sales with this exact model. Any other lessons you guys picked up on? Let me know in the comments.